Welcome to episode 7 of the Willpower podcast. Today, my guest is Avinash Nayak. Avi is a really good friend of mine. He has inspired me in many ways, particularly in business, health and fitness, really just going after what I want to do. Avi is an engineer and he sells books online. There is a ton to take away from this conversation. Enjoy. All right. What draws you to entrepreneurship?
First of all, I want to say thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to be part of this. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, so I'm glad you had me on. I feel honored, and I know this is gonna blow up. So I'm so proud of you for starting this, and I can see how into it you are. So I'm so happy that you're keeping this going. What draws me to entrepreneurship? I think at a young age I started with it. I used to sell like Mario, you know that game Mario, like where you have to and then it gets faster after you finish the game and then you kind of repeat it.
Yeah.
And so that was the first game that I ever sold, and it was on like a 3.5 floppy A disc. You remember the old school ones?
So
before CDs, like one before CDs.
How do they play the game?
So they have to insert it into like a floppy drive disk thing on the PC. It's all PC. Yeah. But after that, then it was like, man, I'm getting money for something I downloaded illegally.
So you download it, install it onto a disc.
Yeah.
And then
sell it. Right. That was the first ever one.
So smart. Do you remember how much you sold them for?
I think it was like $12 or something.
It's not bad.
Yeah, not bad.
And how old were you?
I was maybe like 7.
Oh, dude, that's good money.
Yeah, it was
for
pretty
a 7-year-old?
great. Yeah. Maybe a little older, maybe like 8 or 9. I don't know. But dude, it was incredible.
And where did you get that idea?
I don't know. I don't know where I got the idea, but thankfully my parents allowed me to do it. You know, like usually at that age you're kind of told like why.
Yeah, I could see. I don't think my parents would be happy with.
Yeah.
Me like going and making money off people.
Exactly.
They wouldn't like that.
And the intimidating thing was it was like a mom and a kid. So then I was like, oh my God, this like adult is in the room. How am I gonna sell this or something? You know, there was this fear.
It's like your pre-sales pitch nerves.
And then, dude, it was so funny because I remember that moment where I was like, okay, I'll show you how it works. And then I play the game, have the kid play the game. I thought that was my like way in, get the guy hooked. And then the mom was like, is this the one that you want for the kid? And then the kid's like, yeah. I was like, all right, $12. After that, I let it go for a long time, but there's always been this weird itch and urge in me. Do you feel like entrepreneurship is kind of one of those things that you're inherently wanting to do?
It always just excited me, yeah.
Really?
I never really... So when I was young, I would watch... Or I guess when I got access to like YouTube and maybe when I was like 12, 13... I would watch like one of the big ones was like sell candy at school. But you really have to go out there to do that, to start doing that. And you don't make that much.
Right.
Because it's like each time you sell a piece of candy, you get like $1.
Yeah.
And you're probably making maybe 50 cents per piece. So it's like you got to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
And like you got to be the candy guy now at school. It's like you got this big box. So I never did that.
You didn't do the candy selling?
I didn't do it. We did it for our band trip, actually.
Oh, yeah. 1 year. I remember I did that in high school, too, yeah.
And that was also similar. It was like you sell 100 pieces of candy, and then you get like $20 towards your band trip. And it's
right.
Like, that was so hard for $20.
Yeah.
And I remember, so me and all my friends did it, and like most of us ended up having to pay the entire, like, because we just end up eating it, or like someone else would steal it. And, like,
yeah.
It didn't work.
Yeah.
And then when I was like 17, maybe 16 or 17, I started I saw a video where a guy was like selling clothes. He would like go thrift shopping and then sell the clothes on eBay or on his website or whatever. So then I got into that. I would go to like the either Goodwill or there was this place called Savers in my city. It was like the Savers outlet. You buy clothes by the pound. It would be like $2 a pound. And you gotta like ruffle through everything. And so I did that for a little bit. I would like search for good clothes and then take pictures and put it on eBay. I don't know if I came out positive on that. Just because I bought a lot of clothes that I didn't end up selling. And so... Did
you do this with your friend who was doing it before, or was this independent?
No, independent.
Okay, it was independent. Okay.
Yeah, I just saw a YouTube video about it.
Oh, so you don't even know this guy? This is some random guy off the net.
Random guy who was like, make $1,000 in a day. Whoa. And he did that. And then in 24 hours, he had sold $1,000 worth of stuff.
Impressive.
So yeah, that was my initial... And again,
and you're selling it to like kids in high school or something?
On eBay.
On eBay only? Oh, yeah, eBay.
Just eBay.
Okay. Huh.
And it was... Yeah, because it's exciting when you buy all the stuff and you like post a few of them, but then it's like, okay, this is like a process now. It's like, this is going to take me a few hours to take pictures of everything I bought, post everything, write the descriptions. And so like that initial excitement can wear off as you get into the actual nitty gritty of doing all of it.
Yes, I've been through that struggle, man. I feel like I know what you mean, but did you feel like when did you give up on that? Were you like, I'm not making no money, time to quit? Or when was it?
I never really like quit because I like their list. Some of it's still listed.
No way.
Like every once in a while I get a thing that's like something sold. And then I would just like text my sister because I packaged them and wrote numbers. And I'd be like, ship number 12. I'm sending you the
no way
shipping label.
Wow.
But I think I gave up on like buying new stuff maybe like a few months in, where sometimes I would go to like Marshall's or TJ Maxx, those kind of places, and like find deals they had, and then find if I could see it on Amazon or eBay for more.
Yeah.
Kind of like arbitrage them.
That's impressive. Yeah.
But again, it never was super lucrative, and there's a scaling issue there, which is like I had to go and find everything.
Yeah. But I feel like you have to start there. Like I started something very similar where you have to start very at the individual level, go through that struggle, and then only later do you figure out scale and all that stuff. Because you got to go through the nitty gritty of even selling something. One thing that I didn't get exposed to was selling something in person. Yeah, we had to sell those like candy bars and stuff just for trips, but I wish I got more exposed to that. Like, did you ever get exposed to selling in person? Yeah.
No.
I wish I did. Did you?
Yes, I wish I did.
Yes. I don't think I was very shy.
I don't think I've ever done that.
I don't think. Were you pretty shy as a
kid?
Kid? Yeah,
for sure.
I don't think I could have done it.
And I wouldn't like tell people about the stuff I did. It was just like, oh, I just do this thing on eBay, but I don't really like if I had put it out there more, I probably could have done better.
Yeah. But I feel like entrepreneurship has something to do with like your relationship with money, you know? Like you feel like you can do it. First, you need that sense of confidence, which I don't know if that's inherent or not. And then second, you need to, I don't know, have somewhat of a inkling towards like, can I do it myself? I don't think it can be induced in people. I know it sounds weird, but
yeah, that is true. Because you can hear podcasts about like where you hear an entrepreneur's story. But at least for me, a lot of the time, I don't think like, oh, I could do that too. Right. It's usually like, oh, wow, that's so cool that they did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, having that like, oh, I can do that too.
Yeah.
It's something I could be successful at.
And I think that came later in life. Like I'd say maybe, even though I had like small stints of entrepreneurship here and there, like, but I think it kind of came maybe mid-20s, maybe 24, 25 is when I really started to understand that like there's some factors that play into it, like persistence plays into it.
Yep.
And then like reading weirdly played into it for me, where you read a lot of stories, like biographies are really like at the top of the list for me, where you realize, oh wait, this guy's almost the same as me, and he became this incredible person. And so you kind of start to see, you live vicariously through the books, and then you start to emulate how you might see yourself in that story, you know? And so weirdly something switches where you're like, maybe I could do it too, you know? And then that leads to like something more, I think. Yeah.
You get kind of a full picture of them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's just a regular person.
Yeah.
Except for the Elon Musk one.
Yeah, that guy.
I read that and I'm like, yeah, okay.
Insane. I'm so glad.
I'm not gonna
I'd stay away from that with like a 10-foot pole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't want to be that guy. That guy's insane. But I respect him so much.
Dude, it is crazy. His a lot of what usually comes up in this podcast when I ask people about willpower is like they have some vision or some like bigger thing they're reaching for, and that makes like the small difficulties along the way easier to just go through. Like you just do it because you're looking for something higher. And that guy has like the highest visions.
100%.
He's like, I want humans to be interplanetary. I want us to use renewable energy for our cars. He wanted a money internet.
Yep.
Like
PayPal.
Social everything in one.
Yeah.
So it's like he sees things at like the highest level of like, this is what. And like when he was like getting all caught up in the Twitter X stuff. And then and then he's like, what am I doing? Like, we're not going to become interplanetary if I keep focusing on this. That's like how the book ends. He's like, I got to get back to SpaceX.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so crazy.
How impressive, right?
That's the way.
To have that kind of mentality. But I think a lot of his stuff, the reason why it's so impressive to me, of course, like his grandiose visions, but if you look at his really old videos, you realize like, wow, this guy's just so consistent. Like he's like, right after college, I want to do 3 things. I thought the biggest impact could probably be, I think one was space exploration, the other one was electric vehicles, and then the other one was related to biology. And so he wanted to do something in those 3 spaces, not thinking that he might, or I think it was AI was maybe the third. But yeah, it just seemed like that, yeah, the grandiose visions that he has is insane. But, you know, the reason why I would never want to be like him is his childhood is just so depressing. And like, there's something visceral about being able to withstand a lot of failure. Which every entrepreneur needs, but that guy had it way more at a very early age. I mean, I think the book starts off, the Walter Isaacson book, the latest one, starts off with him, you know, getting out of a train with some guy literally dead, walking on the puddles of blood. You know, it's insane to have witnessed that at a young age. Him and his brother are just like, yeah, this is normal. This is just how shit is, because he grew up during the apartheid, and it's insane. Yeah. To grow up in that environment. And then of course on top of that you add this like abusive father and, you know, not a very good home, and it just seems like one thing after the other. Yeah. It's like, you want to live that life? Oh man. I'm like,
and like he talks about stretches of his life where he was like recently there have been like, I think there was one when Twitter was happening where he was super stressed about that. There were times where like SpaceX or Tesla were doing bad, where he's like constantly like vomiting at night and just like in horrible agony over like stressing, just worrying about if things are going to work or not.
I know. How crazy.
So yeah, it is like before you become envious of someone, you want to make sure you understand whether or not you want to be that person.
That's
like
right.
You can't just pick out traits individually.
That's right. Yeah.
You're like, oh, I want to be Elon because he's so driven. It's like, no, you got to be.
Yeah.
You got to take all the bad with the good.
Yeah. But I think it does require that level of tenacity. Maybe I miss a little bit of that because I feel like I play it a little safer than probably most. But you do need that, I feel. You know, that level of tenacity, that level of... I think you have that trait. Like
maybe.
Yeah.
It might just be reckless abandon. I don't know. It's like me just being like, oh, fuck it. Did you ever have that when you were younger?
I was extremely delusional when I was younger because I thought anything was possible, which is like a weird sense of confidence in itself, where I remember I wasn't smart enough to get into a 4-year college, so I had to go to like a junior college first and then transfer over to a 4-year. And so during junior college, I had like a really low GPA, less than a 3 I know you're like a crazy smart genius, but you can get less than a 3.
What?
Yeah.
Goes that low?
So I had less than a 3, and I remember distinctly leaving the counselor's office, and she was telling me, she's like trying to help me out, right? And I'm telling her like, oh, I want to get a PhD. That's just my goal. And she's like looking, and she's like, what are you talking about? And she was really trying to help. She was like, you should think of something vocational. There's these great things that you could probably do. And I distinctly remember leaving that meeting and laughing, knowing that, like, I was thinking to myself, like, oh my God, I can't believe she doesn't think I'm going to get a PhD. Like, It was this delusional self-confidence I had where...
But you did.
And I did, yeah.
So it wasn't exactly delusional.
I don't know. It does seem like, of course, a lot of luck played into it, I feel, for me to complete the PhD journey. But there's so many factors of luck that came in. So I consider myself more lucky than I am, like, driven or smart or anything. But there is a lot of luck that plays into it. But I think you need that sense of self-confidence at the start.
There is a thing where, like, if you can just fully believe in it, like, I think it's the No More Mr. Nice Guy author, Robert Glover.
Yes.
Is that his name?
Yep.
He talks about, like, you just have to... Doors are going to open for you, and it's just up to you to go through them. And it's like, if you don't believe you're going to get there, you're not going to take the opportunities. You're not going to walk through the open doors.
Right.
And so a big part of it is just, like, believing, like, yeah, I'm going to get a fucking PhD.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
But it is kind of funny looking back at it, because I think if I was to look back, I'd be like, well, I agree with her. I don't think that this makes any sense. But when you're in it at the time, it seems so possible, Mm-hmm. And I think even at the start of every entrepreneurship endeavor that you have, so whatever you take on, you almost have to blindly believe that it'll work. Mm-hmm. There's a side to you which just has to believe that, just to keep yourself motivated, and also to, to take that leap. You just kind of have to believe it.
That's something. Do you know who Draymond Green is? Basketball player?
No.
So he's a player he was on the Warriors at this time. I honestly don't know where he's playing now. But someone had asked him a question, and he's not like the best player. He's not a good shooter. He's like kind of a scrappy player. And he was saying how, like, he believes he's the best player. And he was like, yes, I believe that. Like, everyone here has to believe that to get here.
Yeah.
And so he's just making the point, like, every NBA player, for the most part, is going to believe that they are the best, or at least that they can be the best player.
Yeah.
And that's part of what it takes.
I think you're right. And, I see this a lot with UFC fighters, where they go to these press conferences, or they're talking smack with each other, and they're like, I'm the best. No, I'm the best. And they both clearly believe it, that they are the best. And they're probably 99% better than everyone else. And, like, the 1% difference is that belief that they really are.
But there's something about being in it where you're like, I know that I could be. Like, they haven't seen everything I got. Yeah. Okay, so we got 3 categories today that you prepared for.
Yeah.
We have business, health, and money.
Yeah.
I love all these topics. I would say business is the one I'm least familiar with.
Okay.
So let's start there.
Business?
So this is, yes, did you put all this together?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a framework for willpower in business.
Yeah.
Let's talk about mistakes made in business, creating businesses, or working on businesses.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me it was the starting of the business. You have to have all that stuff we just talked about, where you have to believe that it'll work out and all that stuff. But the less sexy thing that no one wants to talk about is you have to calculate the downside. Like, you just have to know how much you're willing to lose, and then you're comfortable with that, then you should do that. Like Zell, or what's his name, Ron Zell or something. He's the real estate guy. Howard Zell, I forget his name. Anyway, so he's really big into real estate, and then every single deal that he's made has always been about calculating the downside. And there's a lot to be said about that. There's Manish Babra, who talks about heads I win, tails I don't lose too much.
Yeah.
That's really like a great philosophy of, I don't mind losing this much. And the misconception of all entrepreneurs is that they're very risk takers. They're huge risk takers. In fact, they do everything to minimize risk. They try and minimize the risk, and those are the best entrepreneurs. A good example of this are the Patels. So they're like, well, if I start a motel, how much am I going to be losing? Well, I got overhead, which is already taken care of because we're living in the motel. I'm hiring my family members, so I'm less overhead there. So they're really downside protecting. And then they're like, okay, within the first maybe 5-6 months we'll be profitable, and then maybe we can think about like expanding out. And so all of these great entrepreneurs really take that approach of how much could I possibly lose. But the people who get notoriety are the people, because it's sexier. It's so cool to talk about it. It's like, I was living in my basement, and then finally I got this big breakthrough, and that sounds way better than, well, I had a bunch of money saved up, and turns out I used a little bit of that to start something and grow it over time. It's like, no one wants to hear that story.
Yeah.
But it is a very common misconception that you need first a lot of money to start a business, which is just not true. Or if you need VC money to start a business, that's also very not true. More than 90% of the businesses in America are non-VC backed. So it's not like you need a lot of money to start a business. In fact, the majority of them are mom and pop shops. In America, that's usually how most businesses are operating, just less than 5 employees. And so to start off as kind of a solopreneur is a great way to start a business, I think. So you don't need so those two misconceptions have to be, I think, removed. Like those two, if you're okay with the downside as well as you're okay with not putting up a lot of money, you should start a business, I think. And if you're driven, of course, all that other stuff that we talked about, and you're okay with taking that risk, I think that's probably the best way. And that's how I started.
Just start by starting. Do something.
Right.
The LLC filing fee is $300 in Texas.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Exactly. Yeah. There is something to be said about that. Like if you start something, then the initial traction. I don't know if you've read The Alchemist. Have you read The Alchemist? Okay, Paulo Coelho or whatever his name is. It's a really famous book, and he has this great quote about if you start, then there's this thing called beginner's luck that usually people say, but it's the universe trying to conspire to help you. It's wanting you to succeed, and usually people get that at the start, and that's just the universe rewarding you for taking that first step, And of course, then you go through the hardships, and hopefully you're persistent through that. But I think that you probably have to be okay with failing a lot as well. Like that's been my experience, at least with the business that I started. So I started my business just like 4 or 5 years ago. And so this was so tough. The first 2 years, I tell all my friends who are either entrepreneurially driven or they're starting a company, the first 2 years are always going to be hard. So, like you and Tim definitely lean on me for videos, whatever you need, all that stuff. Like anything that you need, like social proof is a big one. Like Vielka with her product, like if she needs a review, totally got you. Video review, got you. Whatever you need to just make it past the first 2 years. And that helps.
Yeah. Those first 2 years. So what was that like for you? Was it just trying different things?
Yeah.
Did it feel like it was wasting time, wasting money? What was the...
Wasting time is one. Wasting money, I wasn't as concerned about, because I think wasting money was like second thought, because I'd calculated my downside. I was okay with losing all the money.
Okay.
And so that wasn't that big of a concern, but wasting time was a concern. And what to work on is like another concern. It's really hard because there's so many options. Like you could go into so many business, types. But it's not, like where I first started off my journey was, I wanted it to be something online, because I knew that in the future, if it was on autopilot, it'd be easier to do. So first was Amazon FBA, if you've heard of that model.
Yes.
Where you sell stuff on Amazon.
I did look into this at one point.
Oh, you did? Okay. What persuaded you against it?
Just I didn't put enough work into it. It was during college, and I was going into freshman year break, like winter break. And I was like, okay, I'm going to spend the month figuring this out, trying to like pick a product. And then I just never like really did the work.
Yeah, it's
to
hard.
Pick something.
It's so hard.
Because I had a friend who was like talking about this, and he was like, dude, I'm going to do this thing Amazon FBA. Like, I'll just sell some socks or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, you have to like find a good, it's not just going to make money automatically. You got to actually find the product that's going to sell right.
Yeah. But that was the first place that I started. And I think it was like 6 products that failed before maybe 2 of them worked. And were these custom type, like you made them, or were you just kind of arbitraging from Alibaba, or what was the model? The first thing was I leaned on like a mentor type of thing, because I was like, I don't even know this model. What does it even mean? So then I go hire this guy to be like, hey man, can you teach me how to do this thing? And then he's like, yeah, sure, do these products, it'll work. And it was like a gold runner, table run, you know what they have at weddings, you know, those like lace. I was like, okay, I guess this is a product. Then you go through it and you're like, it failed miserably. And that was my lesson number 1. It's like, no one can just give you the shortcut right away. You got to like go through the hard part of learning it yourself. And so that was money wasted on mentors. But mentors can be amazing, but I think you have to see through a lot of it, because they're out to make money, obviously. And so you have to be able to somehow filter that out.
Have you been able to find like organically find mentors? Because the thing with mentorship is like they can't do anything for you. That's the first thing. If someone is doing something for you, I feel like they're no longer a mentor.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're selling you a service, basically.
That's a good point. What do you mean by organically, though?
Like, have you met someone doing something that you aspire to do, and then they took on kind of a mentor role to you?
Oh, I see.
Have you had that happen?
It's always been like a video type of thing where it's like, okay, you're doing this. Let me tell you what I would do if I was in your situation. I don't know how you categorize that, but that's the. But I've gone through so many of those, like a lot of those courses, a lot of the, and there are nuggets of wisdom in it. I want to say like there's like really some, because clearly it's worked for them.
Yeah. But
that same model that's worked for someone else might not work for you. So you should still learn it if you can, and. You know, to everyone who wants these courses, like who might benefit from it, there's this site called Get Pseudo, and it's where all these influencers, you know, they have their course, which they sell for like thousands of dollars. But what really smart people, because you're always looking for somewhat of an edge, right? And so you just want these courses for free, and the way to do that is you go to this Get Pseudo website where people buy as a bulk. It's called a group buy, and so they buy it and then they distribute it out to those who paid for that membership. Okay. Yeah. And I really highly suggest people do that, because that's how I learned. And I went through this course called ASM, Amazing Selling Machine, and that's like a $12,000 course or something. But of course, if you use Get Pseudo, it's like $0. So you just learn everything that you can, and you have to go through maybe 5-6 courses, because you want to get. It's almost like how Chris Rock thinks of his comedy. It's like you have this cup right here, and he looks at it from this angle, and he looks at it from this angle, and this angle, and this angle, and he's like, men and women are different. And then he looks at it from here, and he looks at it from here, whatever it is, you know. And that's how you have to look at every business model. You just got to like look at it from different angles, and the only way to do that is to go through the different knowledge base that's out there, and try and understand. Okay, he looked at it like this and then like this, so then that's where the learning comes in. At least for me, that's been very helpful. Okay. Yeah, and then after the FBA, that failed, but 2 products succeeded. I don't know. It's just profitable. Yeah. Are
they the ones you still are running?
Yep, those are still running. And then I tried YouTube. I think I failed like 13 channels before one of them succeeded.
How would you decide with the channel to cut it?
Man, I tried so many strategies. One was you can use this thing called vidIQ to find out which keywords have the highest search volume and then the lowest competition. And so based off of that, I thought I could like figure out, man, I've had some terrible channels, man. I've had, I thought Airbnb tours would kill it. I was like, yeah, And I went really nerdy about it. I like scraped Airbnb in these popular cities and then took out all their images, made it into like a video thing, had someone make the video compilation and be like, if you're 5 places to live if you're in New York, 5 places if you're in Amsterdam, whatever. And failed miserably.
Dang, okay.
Yeah. And I started, me and my ex, we started one together called, it was about zucchini recipes.
Okay, just straight up zucchini.
Yeah, because the metrics looked really good, and so I was like, yeah, zucchini recipes. Of course, this is gonna kill. And then how much zucchini are you gonna do? You know what I mean? And then yeah, you're like taking on other people's video content, compiling it together so that it looks somewhat decent. It's terrible ideas, man. One was like a Reddit one, which I first started, where you're literally just reading out Reddit threads, and then that one failed. Yeah, my buddy Logan, who succeeded with YouTube, I think he's making like 200K or something off that. And
dang, just on YouTube.
Yeah. He's doing really well. And so, again, it's like what works for others might not work for you. You got to figure out what works for you. But the consistent thing is that I always calculated the downside, even in these ventures. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm fine with losing that. And I outsourced a lot very early in the business. Yeah. So that is like a huge leverage piece you have where, you know, you can get extremely cheap talent. So this would be places like Fiverr, Upwork, Online Jobs PH. Those are the 3 big ones, where you could just hire someone to do a lot of the work for extremely cheap. And so I got it down to like $15 a video, which is absurd.
Crazy.
Yeah, because all these courses where I've looked at different angles and they're all like 150 a video, 200 a video. I'm like, are you kidding me? I got no money for that. And so
15.
You figure it out. Yeah. And then so then I was okay. I could make like a lot of videos, and I had a metric about when to give up, when to keep going, which was if it's more than 50 videos and then I don't have 1,000 subscribers, which is what you need to get monetized on YouTube, I'm going to give up on that channel. And so I had a metric for when I was going to give up on the channel. And so after 50 videos for, I think, 18 or maybe, somewhere around their channels, or maybe it was 12 or 13, but a lot of failed channels. And one of them worked. And then thankfully it's profitable. But yeah, a lot of failures.
So how did you keep going through those failures? Like what kept you being like, oh, okay, that one didn't work. Let me try again. Let me see if I can get 1,000 on this one.
I think I have a gluttony for pain. Like I really, I'm somewhat okay with it. Are you built the same way? Like, are you okay with pain?
I feel like I would just lose the belief at some point. Having that, like failing at the same thing over and over, at a certain point, I'd be like, okay, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Even though, like, if you do stick with it, it will work. But I don't know how, in those moments, how to not.
I agree with you. I think it's a tough question about, like, when to give up and when not to. But I weirdly, I think it's because I've
Did you have an overall metric of, like, I'm going to try YouTube for this long?
No.
Or it's just like, I'm going to just keep trying it.
Yeah, keep trying it. And of course, you're not just trying it and just repeating it. You're like learning along the way.
Yeah.
So really the learning aspect, like iterating every single time and learning it, is
that kind of keeps you going.
That keeps you going.
Let me try this thing and add on this.
Yeah, and I think like learning has been a very pivotal aspect of my journey. At least it's like you gotta love learning, and I really like learning. Whether it's about business or some sciencey thing, I really really like learning, and so you have to have that in you where you're like, okay, this failed, but is it really a failure? Like I read this book called The F Word when I was really young, maybe like 13, 14 or something. And I was failing in high school. I wasn't very sorry. Like I got over a 3 though. I was like a 3.2. But I read, because I was failing in high school, and then I realized after I read that book, I was like, wait a second, all the most successful people are failing. I must be amazing. It's just like, no, dude, you're like failing. Like, again, that,
dude,
like,
that's the one thing people always say. It's like, oh, Bill Gates dropped out of college. Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college. It's like they dropped out to do their business that like became super successful.
Yeah.
They dropped out because they had something better to do. It wasn't like they were just lazy and bad at school. But
and
yes.
By the way, they also had a downside protection there because
They could
Bill
go
Gates.
back.
Yeah, Bill Gates could just go back. Same thing with
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg. They could just go back.
And I think both of them planned to go back. They were like, I'm going to take the semester off.
That's right. That's right.
Like
So they
just
really
quit.
calculated the downside even there too.
Super
yeah.
smart.
Yeah. But
Okay,
yeah,
but
I
so
think
you were
I'm
in
okay
high
with the
school.
failure.
You read the F word.
Right. Redefining the F word, I think, is the name of the book. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after that, I kind of, you know what the funny part is that, have you ever failed an exam or a course in your life?
I don't know. I don't think so.
You've never failed?
Like an F? I don't think so.
Yeah. Or a D?
Probably at some point.
Okay. And you remember that feeling?
I know the feeling of not liking a test score, yes.
Oh, not liking your test score.
Yeah, like getting a result and being like, oh, like this, your stomach drops. Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
I distinctly remember getting like 2 Ds in a semester or something. And then I looked at myself in the mirror. I'm like, this is as low as it's going to get, man. Are you cool with this? And then I was like, yeah. You just like oh, this is it. This is not that bad, you know.
Yeah. So you became okay with failing.
I became okay with failing at a very early age, and it's not like I intentionally wanted to kind of happen.
Yeah.
But it teaches you. Looking back, it like teaches you how to like be better or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, with dating and approaching women, like you got to become comfortable with failing. In terms of being rejected.
100%, yes.
Yeah.
And different like avenues work for different people. Like some people, maybe it put you in that category where you're smart, so you know what you want to do, and you're able to accomplish that, and you have willpower, which is like incredible. #willpower. But it's like a part of that is just like if you there's multiple flavors of success. Like you can achieve it through failure, but you should actually not bet on the guy who fails a lot. Like you should bet on the guy who's winning a lot of the time, And so there's different failures. I mean, there's different flavors of like getting to nirvana, Yeah.
Yeah.
Different.
And you want to think about like how many times you fail, like, because if you fail, but like you can just keep going. Like someone could fail 10 times, but they succeed once. If that success is like a big deal, then that's okay. It doesn't matter.
That's right.
Whereas if it's like you're failing a bunch and then your success is like, oh, I make $500 a month now, then it's like, okay, well,
Yeah. Like defining what that success is for you, you mean?
I'm saying like you have to, failure and success are not necessarily just like counterparts. It like is like, how much did you fail? Did you lose a ton of money and time, or like did you learn from it, or did you not learn from it? And then a success is the same thing. It's like, so I'm saying it's not just like one success equals one failure.
Yeah.
It depends on what went into each one and what the results actually were.
I think you're right. Yeah. Completely agree. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay, what else in business?
So in business, I think that one, calculate your downside. And then some things that might be helpful is, keeping systems. Like that's a really big one that really helped me.
Okay,
so,
one quick thing I want to mention. I talked about this with Erin Lavaroni yesterday.
Yeah. And
when she works with a client, she has them set up these like if-then statements for when they hit rough patches. So it's like, if this happens, then I'll do this. So if I accidentally, if I eat a donut, then I will not eat another donut that day, or I will go for a walk after. So that it's like when you fail, you don't just be like, oh, fuck, I failed, I quit, I'm done. It's built in. You kind of walk yourself through like, okay, there are going to be moments where I might fuck up, but this is how I'm going to react and continue on.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that could be good with this kind of thing we're talking about with failing as well, is walking yourself through, like kind of calculating your downside, but it's almost like your emotional downside. It's like,
right,
I'm going to feel bad about it at this point. I'm going to want to quit. That's going to happen. What should I do when that happens?
Yeah.
And then when that comes, you're like, okay, I knew this was going to happen. This is how I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. I love that. I think there's a lot of truth in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The marshmallow experiment. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So have you heard of this experiment?
Oh, yeah.
It's so. It's a
fun one.
Yeah, it's a fun one where people usually, the experiment is that at a young age, can you predict how successful people can be at an older age? And it has a lot to do with willpower. And I think, we were talking about entrepreneurship. Maybe at a young age, you could also try and decipher this as well, where can you, so the experiment goes that, you have kids come in, and the people who can withstand the marshmallow for a period of time for a larger reward later. So you can have 1 marshmallow now, or you can have 3 marshmallow later, but you have to wait, and they're literally right here.
And they leave you in the room alone.
Yeah. They leave you in the room, and there's a really cute video on YouTube about these kids like trying to distract themselves. They're like looking everywhere, trying to not. One guy's like licking the marshmallow, and like doesn't really count. But yeah, there's like and so they track these people over time. And then it turns out that there's like a huge benefit in like people who were able to withstand eating it for that larger reward. And I think the benefits were like higher SAT scores, higher lower BMI, and then coping skills for adulthood and adolescence. Like they were able to kind of get to that.
Right.
Which is so
delayed gratification.
Yeah, which is so impressive. Which makes me think that it could be somewhat. Maybe cultivated at somewhat of a young age. And there's this other one where it was similar to this experiment called hot and cold. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling when it comes to motivation. Where
hot and cold.
Yeah, so the concept is, during, it's very similar to this marshmallow test, you could tell the kid, or maybe like later in life, you could say, could I have think of it when it's at a cold moment. So you're thinking, just picture the marshmallow instead of a hot one, which would be the emotion of eating it, and how does it taste, and how does it smell, And the interesting thing there is that the ones which are hot allow you to not have as much motivate. I mean, the level of motivation goes up for the picture one, because
the cold
one, and that's so interesting to me. That
wait. So explain that more. So if you have the cold visualization, which is just like I see a marshmallow, versus the hot one, which is like the sensational imagining eating it.
Yeah.
So are you saying the person who imagines the cold thing has an easier time staying away from those?
Yeah. So it goes. So if you think of cool systems, which are like thinking of the marshmallow as like a pitcher, then you're able to delay gratification more.
Okay.
And compared to if you had hot aspects of it, which is like tasting it or smelling it.
Yeah.
And so, you can enhance self-control by thinking of systems as hot and cold, which really made me think of, motivation versus willpower. Like motivation is kind of this fluctuating thing. Where you're like, man, I'm so motivated. You watch like David Goggins video, and you're like, I'm about to kill this thing. But it's fluctuating, right? You don't feel that way every day. Yeah, but with willpower, I feel like it's more steady, and then it's more controllable, and it's actually a muscle like that.
It's something you want to build in, and this is another thing from Aaron. People with the highest willpower use it the least.
Oh, tell me about that. What do you mean?
Yeah, and similar in this book, which is like you don't want to use your willpower too much, or it gets overloaded. The people with the most willpower are the ones who have their environment set up so that they don't need to use it. And basically you're building these neural patterns. That's like, I don't eat cookies. I don't have a choice to, but I don't.
Yeah.
Then when you go out and there's cookies, you're like, oh, I don't eat cookies. Because you've already built up that pathway in your brain. By not having cookies around, you never eat them.
Oh, interesting. Right.
And so it's really interesting. The people with the strongest willpower don't use it the most.
Damn. Does it get weaker over time then? Because you don't use it that much?
That's what I was thinking, is like, wouldn't it? But I think it's that you're building that neural pathway. That's like, I don't watch YouTube too much, or I don't do this because it's not accessible to me.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, because there was this other study while I was like researching willpower. It seems so interesting because so the study with like radishes versus cookies. Have you heard of that study?
It's here. Yeah, I have not.
You have not. It's a really interesting study. So the way that the experiment goes is you have two dishes when you come into the room.
Oh yeah, okay.
One's radish and then one's a cookie or like a couple of cookies. And so the thought is that is it a biological thing? Motivation, is it a biological thing? So or is there a well of it? Mm-hmm. Like, do you just lose out?
Is there a certain amount?
Yeah, is there a certain amount of willpower? And it's interesting that the people who use the willpower not to eat the cookies or smell the cookies and used up the reservoir to resist and just ate the radishes, those people had less willpower to do the puzzle or whatever activity came after compared to the ones who ate the cookies. They're like, they had more willpower.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what I would have thought.
It is so interesting.
Yeah.
It is something that like tires. You run out of it.
Right.
There's a similar one in this book, The Willpower Instinct, where she talks about this study where they do something similar where they make people resist some food and they like have them fast for a day. So it's like really bad.
Even more. Yeah.
And then they let one group eat the cookies or candy, and then the other group didn't get to, and then they like were like, okay, eat however many you want. And the group who had to resist ate so much more.
Oh, no kidding.
When they were allowed it. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Because they used up all that
willpower.
Yeah,
it might be a depleted resource.
Yeah, and then there's something in this book about how it's related to blood sugar. It's like when you get an increase, right. So it's not the blood sugar level, but it's the derivative of that. So it's like if it's increasing, you feel more willpower because your body's like, okay, we're gaining nutrients, like we have the ability to make hard decisions.
That's right. And I think
whereas when it's decreasing, that's when you're
I think you're absolutely right, because I think there is a sense of, and they usually say this, like there's another study about glucose, so that they have like 2 cups, one with water and glucose, and then the other one with just water and an artificial sweetener, which is a dummy. And so the people who had the glucose, they had more willpower compared to the ones who didn't. So it makes you think it might be a biological phenomenon where people are able to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's 2 parts of your brain fighting each other. I mean, they don't have to be fighting if you can get them aligned, but that's like when you're making a hard choice, it's your prefrontal cortex, which is your thinking rational brain, and then it's your limbic system, which is the emotional.
They're fighting each other when using, because
it's usually your emotional state is like, oh, I want to lay down, I want to eat this cookie. And then your rational side is like, no, like that's not what's best for us right now. And so which one wins is typically just defined by like your energy level.
Interesting.
Or if you have like those neural circuits grooved in. Yeah.
And I think there is something to be said about like the habit of it. If you get into the habit of doing something for a long time, then
that circuit is clearly defined and it's easier.
Yeah. What are your tricks to do that? Like, how do you trick yourself into doing things that you don't want to do?
Creating a habit in that way. I think like that accessibility stuff is super important. So not
having snacks around.
Not having the snacks around. Another one is finding things you enjoy. And then also like picking out the enjoyable parts when you're doing them. So like if I go for a walk with my weighted vest on, I try and make sure to enjoy it. And I'm like, oh, this is nice. Like it's hot out, but the sun's out. It's nice. I'm with my dog. Like picking out the good parts so that your brain associates it with a good thing. That can help a lot. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I think really, really trying to just find the good aspects of what you're doing. So it's like I work for an hour on something and then I have some positive results. Like it feels good after because I'm like, oh, I created this thing. This is good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you have reward systems that you put in place for tasks that you complete?
Not really. Not external rewards.
Oh,
it's usually just like whatever I worked on.
Okay.
I enjoy that working. But I make sure to connect that in my brain.
Yeah, I think I can kind of see your perspective, but I remember you and I were going back and forth about like a cheat day. My thing is like, man, Saturdays, I can't wait for that cheat day thing. But what's your take on that? But you're saying don't do that.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
Okay.
I think the I think it can be good to give yourself some kind of reward. The only thing about cheat days that I don't like is the kind of unconsciousness of it, where it's just like, oh, it's a cheat day, nothing counts today, I'll eat whatever, I don't care. I think you still want to be aware of what's happening.
Yeah.
So it could be like, for some people, they'll be like, okay, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes to scroll on Instagram because I worked really hard on this thing. I think that's fine as long as you're aware and conscious of what you're doing.
So still calorie count even on your cheat day is what you're saying?
Yes, if you are calorie counting.
Yeah.
Just be aware of what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm eating this cookie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah. And one of the tricks that you taught me was so like I use it so much, which is take like 5 minutes or 10 minutes to like before you eat that thing. Like, let's say you got like pizza waiting or something, and you're just take 5 minutes and be like, I'm about to eat this pizza. And then somehow something happens in your brain.
Aaron called this surfing the urge.
Oh, I see.
So you just let the urge, you just ride it for a little bit, and it's an emotional thing. So it goes up and down. It's going to go down. And then you can be like, okay, do I still want to eat it? Maybe you still do. Yeah. But the thing is, if you keep doing that, at some point, you're probably going to like start not eating it. You'll be like, right, okay, I surfed the urge. I don't really want to eat it anymore. Yeah. And that's a win in itself. So even if you are trying to build a habit, that's really important, is finding small wins. This was something I heard in a podcast with Alex Hermosi, where he's like, let's say you do a fitness routine, you start a new one, and you make it 4 weeks, and then you quit. And then you try one like a few months later, and you make it 6 weeks, and you quit. That's a win. Because you made it longer before you quit. So it's like, take whatever wins you can.
Oh, I like that.
And keep trying. Yeah. Keep trying those things.
Do you do the habit bundling where
habit stack?
Yeah, habit or habit bundling, I guess, because so one of the studies that they did was like, you know, you can only listen to your favorite audiobook as you work out. So that was one of the studies where it was like, can I bundle, the fun thing that I like doing with the activity that I might not like doing? And so it turned out the people who listened to audiobooks while working out worked out more because they wanted to listen to their audiobooks. So do you do that?
I haven't been doing that recently. I'm trying to think, though. There isn't... Yeah, I don't think there is. I don't think there's anything I inherently dislike doing. Right really? Now, any of my habits. Yeah, like some days I'm like, oh, I have to do this. Right. Meditation or breath work or workout. But for the most part, it's like once I get into it, I enjoy it.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, that can be a good one. That's a good one for like tasks that are not regular. That's like, oh, I got to do this thing. And I've been like procrastinating it. Let me like turn on some good music. That's going to help me get through it.
Yeah. That's, you know, something about that bundling thing. The Atomic Habits guy, James Clear, says in his book where he's like, well, if you just make it easier for yourself, you're more likely to do it. Like a good example is working out, you know, working out in the morning, where if you already have your gym clothes on when you go to sleep, and then you wake up and you're like, well, I'm already kind of there. Yeah. And then you just make that barrier of you doing it just easier, you know?
That used to be... I used to run like every day. First thing when I woke up, I would run like a mile. And I would just like have the clothes and the shoes right there. They were always there. And so I'd wake up first thing, put them on and go. Yeah. Chris Williamson has in his podcast setup, he said something similar where he's like, if I want to record more, and if I want to record more, I should make it as easy as possible. So he has like a one button for his whole setup. He just hits a button and it's recording. No and everything way. Is set up. The lights turn on.
That's so smart.
So I want to figure out how to set that up here, but that is it's like if you want to do something, make it as easy as possible to do.
Right. Yeah. And you know, that kind of leads me into thinking like, if you can make a system, so engineers are like this. They're kind of superhuman and subhuman at the same time, you know? Like, I know people that I work with who are just so smart. Yeah. Like, almost superhuman. I'm like, how did you how is that possible that your brain is able to do something like this? But they're also subhuman, where they don't really know how to interact, or maybe they don't know how to like they're not emotionally able to connect on some level or whatever. But not all engineers, but the ones that I've noticed at least who are extremely smart, somehow they're also subhuman. But what's incredible, there's a layer of these guys, and what ends up happening is the folks who are extremely good at that thing, let's say it's engineering, they tend to have terrible personal lives. Like they tend to have, like, because they're so focused and so into that thing that they're the best in the world at that thing. But because of the sacrifice that they have to make in the other aspects of life, they're incredible at that one thing. And there's one level above that, which I've noticed, which is there's people who seem to have their stuff together. They got family who love them. The kids are like waiting to see them every summer. You know, like the people who are kind of wholesome and also extremely smart. And so when you study these guys, I'm like, how in the world are these guys even operating? Yeah. Turns out that they have a system for everything. They just plug themselves into the system. What am I doing today? Working out? All right, I got a system for that. What am I doing for like my work thing? Okay, I got a system for that. Yeah. It's like wife, dates, all that stuff. I got a system for that. They have a system for every single thing, and all they really do is just plug themselves into that system, and it's just almost autopilot.
Follow it along.
Yeah, and it's an interesting way to kind of, but it gets boring because that requires routine. But it's an interesting way to try and keep that motivation and maybe consistency alive with.
Yeah, I think the more that you can focus on one thing at a time, just the better.
Yes. Yes.
Which is part of like having a system, is like it tells you what to focus on.
Right.
And you're like, okay, I don't have to worry about this other stuff because I know it's all taken care of.
Yes. Yeah.
That is super important.
But I do have a lot of tricks that I kind of use, because I've noticed that my brain is a little like it's like that little feather or whatever that you put in front of a cat, and you can just let it do anything. Yeah. Or a string in front of the cat. That's me, like 100%. If you put something in front of me and you dangle it, I'll probably be like, "What is going on?" You know. But to trick my brain, I've used the marble trick, which I've told you about, which is you have a set of marbles, you have 2 cups. One cup is completely filled up at the start of the week, and then the other cup is empty. And by the end of the week, you have to transfer every marble to the other cup. That should be the goal. And you could do this for anything you want to be consistent with. So it could be like working out. Like, that's a great one. You just put a marble from one to the other, or like tasks that you have to do, business that you have to go, dates that you have to go on, whatever it could be. You could just put one to the other, so you have a visual representation at the end of the week to say, all right, well, the majority of the pebbles or stones are in the finished bowl. Yeah. And so that's like a good way of like keeping track. That tends to help me out. And then I have also like a trick that I learned from Jerry Seinfeld, where because comedians, they work ridiculously hard at their craft, and it's just because they're just so consistent. And so he had this calendar, I don't know if you've heard of this, where he has a calendar and it just crosses out, and then he crosses out the next date, and he's like, just don't break a chain, because it looks like a chain when you cross it out. And that's a beautiful one. Like, that's such a neat little trick. So something visual that you can see, which just gets you like in the zone.
Like, okay, I want to keep going. Yeah. I want to finish these marbles, move them over.
Yeah.
Or not break that chain.
And there's another one that I use too. I don't know if you do this, but there's like a 10-second rule thing. You just need that like initial impulse to like do something. And then once you're doing it, then you're...
So what's the 10-second rule?
So 10-second rule is usually the first 10 seconds I've noticed, at least with my brain, it comes up with so many excuses not to do something. Whether it's like going on dates, approaching someone that you're interested in perhaps, or like going to the gym or something, where you're just, man, I don't want to do that. Like, that's the first default thing that my brain comes up with. But if you get past that first 10 seconds of initial hesitation, it somehow locks in that, okay, there's momentum, there's flow, there's energy associated with that direction. All right, let me just do it. What do you think?
So is the 10-second rule then just like do something for 10 seconds before you...
If you don't act within 10 seconds, then you won't. You'll come up with even more excuses. You won't do it. So you just force yourself to do it within 10 seconds. Yeah.
Okay. I just thought of another idea. It might have to take more than 10 seconds. But let's say you have something you have to work on. You really don't want to work on it. You tell yourself, I'm going to work on this for 2 minutes or something easy. And then I think something similar might happen where like you're going to come up with all these reasons. You're like, oh, I don't want to fucking do this. But you get through the 2 minutes. And then I feel like at that point, you're in it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like negotiating with your brain. Like, just give me 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll change your mind.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, the 10 seconds is cool. It's just do something within the first 10 seconds.
Yeah, because I find that my brain comes up with so many excuses not to do something. But if you just go past the 10 seconds, it's even shorter than that sometimes. It's like if you just do it within the first 3 or 5 seconds, then the likelihood will be you just acted on your impulse and you're doing it now.
Yeah.
And I like your one. I might adopt that. And I think what also helps is accountability, especially socially. Like that's a really good one for me. Like let's say,
huge.
Like you have this, like you and I, we do this great thing about, you're my accountability buddy. Like, hey, I'm going to tell you I'm going to do something, and of course you're not putting a gun to my head and being like, you better do this, but at least you're like, hey, I've told Will. He's holding me accountable, and I'm holding you accountable for your tests. Now it's like, okay, there's a social accountability to it, and I think that's a good way to trick your brain.
You're just making other people know what you're doing, so then you can't quit.
Yeah.
Like you can't just forget, or like there's something you can do with yourself that you can't do with other people, which is you can kind of trick yourself and lie to yourself, and like in the moment ignore something. It's like, oh, I'm gonna write every day. And then one day you're like, oh, I forgot to write.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm not gonna. You have some excuse. But then as soon as you bring that excuse to someone else, they're like, that's bullshit. What are you talking about? And then you're like, oh, yeah, that is bullshit. But it's because you can trick yourself easier than you can trick other people.
Right. I think you're so right about that. There's this other one which I use quite a bit where you were talking about it before, where your environment changes. Like for example, you don't have any snacks and stuff lying around. It's like your environment allows you to do that. So I've noticed, I don't know if you have this in your house, where you have a place where you work, and that is work energy. Like that is dedicated to work energy. And then maybe like shower obviously is a very obvious one, where you're like, that's only for showers. That's where I do my grooming and everything. Yeah. It'd be weird if you read a book in your shower tub, right? Like it just doesn't, the energies don't mix. But weirdly, it lingers. Have you noticed that? If you try and do a leisurely activity at your work desk, it doesn't feel as good that if you were to do it on the couch.
Right. I try to separate those.
You do?
You do that? Yeah.
Yeah, I do as well. Yeah. I don't know what it's weird about that, but it's
that's a definite thing, that our brains are programmed to like see different places at locations, and then like you take on that kind of mental state. So I try to avoid eating at my desk. That's one thing. I try to avoid eating or watching. Like I don't use my desk for pleasure, for like watching YouTube videos or watching Netflix or anything.
Really?
I keep it away from there.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly for that reason.
Yeah. Control the environment.
Yeah.
I love that.
Okay, let's go into willpower and money, because I like this. I think a lot of people don't fully understand money. And it's the system we're in, so it's a good one to know.
Yeah.
So where's willpower required when it comes to money, and why is it?
Man, money, people's relationship with money is so personal. That's like one thing that usually most people don't talk about, which is so weird.
Yeah, it's a weird thing in America that people don't talk about it, but other countries, they're like
so open.
Like my great aunt asked me like, oh, how much was your house? Like no one asks that in America. She's like, oh, how much did it cost?
Yeah, it's so dumb.
I know it is.
Yeah.
There's no.
Because you're gonna go home and like check on Zillow or something, like how much the house is. Why not just ask the guy? Yeah, totally. Yeah, it is a weird concept, and there's this hidden culture of like, if you talk about money, then you're crass in a way, or maybe you're like.
But we all care about it.
We all care about it.
Yeah,
100%.
But we're pretending. Yeah. We're trying so hard to pretend like we don't.
Yeah, and the people, it comes off douchier that way. Actually, the person who's like, oh look. Like, I don't really want to talk about money. Money is not even a thing. I focus on other aspects of my life. I'm like, you're doing a disservice, mofo, because you are like not telling people how to get to where you're at. That privileged state of like, I don't care about money. I'm like, dude, of course you cared about money 10 years ago when you were broke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's you only to not care about money is such a privileged state that you should really talk about it so that you're uplifting other people. So I agree with you. And the level of transparency that you should have about money is like very, very, it's needed. But I think when it comes to willpower and money, for me, it just has to be automatic. Mm-hmm. Like whatever comes from my paycheck, I've already designated it to the 401k, just automatically savings, whatever.
That's huge.
So I don't even see it. It's just gone. Yeah. Out of sight, out of mind is like my big thing when it comes to money and willpower. What do you have a good system?
I have a similar thing. One thing I wish my credit card had a lower limit. I wish I could have a debit card that had all the credit card rewards. Yeah. Because like I want to have a limited amount where I can like only put this much in this account, and then that's all I can spend.
Yes.
If I go over, it gets declined.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do a very similar thing where I have some automatic investments.
Yeah.
That just come out. So it's like it feels like I make less money than I really do because that's what actually comes into me to my account that I see.
Yeah. And I think keeping money in your bank account is the worst thing. I mean, yeah, maybe you'd have emergency funds there. Yeah. But any excess amount, you should really invest it like just SPY.
There's it's like emergency fund, and then like if you're saving for something specifically within the next like year or two.
Yeah.
If it's any longer than that, then it's definitely makes more sense to put it somewhere.
Yeah. And I think there was a study on that. Like there's this thing called a SMART program. So when I was doing the research on willpower and money, it turns out that there was these guys who were like, how do you get more people to save? Because majority of people don't save. And then how do you get more people to invest in something, similar concepts? And the people who opted in to the SMART program, which is this save money, save more tomorrow. That's what it's called. It's an acronym for SMART. Okay. So the people who went into that, they committed to saving more of their money because they were opted into that already. And there's this really interesting study about how Germany and Austria, they're very similar countries, but there's it's like a 12% organ donor rate in Germany compared to 1% in Austria. It's like, why? That's such a stark difference. And the reason for that is because the opt-in, you have to opt out of donating your organs in Austria. So it drops down to 1%, but the opt-in is already there in Germany. So it's just like, well, clearly you should just opt in to something. And if you don't see it, then it's probably even better. You just close your eyes until you're like, 65 or whatever when you can retire. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, I'm probably good.
Right. So making yourself, like if you have to set up your 401k, do all the steps for that, that's a lot harder than if your company does it for you and then you have to opt out if you don't want it.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, I think in America I've noticed that if you're not educated about this yourself, either through reading books, maybe podcasts, whatever it is, then you're just going blind. You just work and then that's it. But you have to be cognizant of like, okay, where is this actually going? And then you keep it on autopilot and then you're done.
Yeah, it can be so easy to live paycheck to paycheck and not save.
Yeah.
And it's like the smallest difference between and like becoming a millionaire in like 20 years.
100%.
It's just like save like, I don't know how much, but whatever it adds up to, a couple $100 a month.
Yeah, and the trickiest, and I've been like just as at fault about this, but it's time in the market is way better than timing the market. Mm-hmm. Like that's usually the saying is you just keep on consistently just putting into the S&P 500 and you'll just end up rich. It's just mathematically one of the things. So the longer you're in it, you're just putting in money. Like I think a janitor retired with like 30 million or something, and the reason is because he just consistently just did it over time.
Yeah.
And then the people who are having these ridiculously high salaries, they're living paycheck to paycheck because they don't they just don't have that. They see a lot of money in your bank account and you're like, I made it.
Right.
And unfortunately I have friends like that who are living paycheck to paycheck with like a very high paying job. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, what do you mean? I get so much money. I'll never run out of this money. Are you kidding me? It's like such an absurd thing. So I feel like regardless of where you are on the socioeconomic ladder, you can figure out money just by opting into these really small things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest mindset shift that a lot of people might not have is like the ownership. That's the most, like that's how you build long-term wealth is by owning things, whether it's owning stocks, owning property, owning a business.
Yeah.
Like those are the things where you actually make long-term money, because when you're not owning and you're just working for your money, that stops when you stop working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cuts off.
So true.
So
I do think there is one thing to be said about money too, and that's the people that you surround yourself with. Like that makes such a big difference with money, because you know, the Roger Bannister, is that the guy's name, who made the like 4-minute mile or whatever? He broke that barrier.
Oh, that could be, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, yes.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
So there's this guy who broke that 4-minute barrier.
People were trying forever. They thought it was impossible.
They thought it was impossible. And then the same thing happened with the sound barrier. People thought they couldn't go past the sound barrier. And clearly someone did that. And then everyone did it.
Immediately after. Yeah. It was like weeks after someone broke his record.
Yeah.
And the running one.
You know, it's just shattering that first paradigm. And, you know, it goes even larger than that. There's this book called What Technology Wants by Kevin Kelly. And it's this beautiful book about, you know, different aspects of the world have ideas that just happen. And so, like, the same tool that was discovered in South America also happened in China. It's like, how did that happen at the same time? Like, very, very similar times, because you can carbon date back and find out exactly when these tools existed. It's like there's something in the ether where, you know, it's just there. And I think maybe people who are more creative have that. There's this beautiful, it's called Big Magic by Elizabeth, I forget her name. She did the Eat, Pray, Love book, but she wrote this book called Big Magic, and not Big Magic, maybe it is Big Magic, but anyway, so she wrote this book where she's like, you know, these creative people, there's this poet where she wants to extract things from, so she's like, the way that I came up with this poem was I saw it literally whirling around, and like a tornado had to like pull it back, and she wrote the poem from the very last word to the first word. That's how she wrote the poem.
What?
Yeah, it's like something in the ether that she just picks out. And I think if you surround yourself with people who are maybe like-minded about money, in terms of like, can you where they consider themselves, I am an investor versus I invest, or like I'm a saver.
That's versus, on here too.
Right. Financial I'm a saver identity versus I save money. You know, like that makes a big difference. Where they like, I'm a business owner compared to like, I'm trying this thing.
Right.
Or whatever.
The behaviors kind of follow.
Right.
Once you take on that identity.
Yeah. Once you have that identity, I think there's a lot to be said about that. Like, so if you have friends who are able to break that barrier, I think it's probably like the you're more likely to get rich and healthy. Actually, I'd say. I mean, you know more about this than I do, but do you think that's true? Where you surround yourself with healthier people?
100%.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Certainly. The more, if you surround yourself with people who prioritize their health, who go to the gym, eat well, like you just begin doing that, because that's just like what you see. It becomes normal, and those behaviors now are just you slowly take them on.
Oh, really?
And I'm sure you've heard, like, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yes. Yeah. But I think you're right. I did know that you end up being healthier, but I wonder how, if you take a really fat guy and then he just hangs out with you for a couple of months, does that mean that guy will get fit?
He's gonna get more fit.
Really?
I bet, yeah, than he was.
Huh.
He's gonna pull me down a little bit, probably. But
oh, can it go the opposite too?
Yeah.
Oh, no
sure.
kidding.
If you hang out with a bunch of guys who do nothing all day,
right.
like you're gonna start doing that. So it's important to be very careful with who you spend a lot of time with.
Yeah.
Be selective.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, I am curious. I mean, I don't know if you wanted to talk more about the money aspect, but I think you're kind of the pro, at least in my life, about what willpower does in terms of health. Mm-hmm. I'd love to talk about that with you, because I feel like you
let's
really
get into the
know
health one.
That world. But what do you usually do? Oh, by the way, one thing that might help anyone with the money thing is this app called Rocket app. Do you use that? Okay, so that's a really good one, where you just get $5 a month or something, and then it just categorizes everywhere that you're spending it, so you visually see where am I spending money every month, and then they make it so easy to cancel a subscription that you're no longer using.
Oh,
and so
okay.
that's a really great one.
Rocket.
Yeah, Rocket app. I use it. It's very good.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I am curious to know how willpower you use in health. But I want to talk about maybe like healthy habits as well as mental health, like those two aspects.
Oh yeah, that's a broad one.
Yeah.
Okay, so long-term health. Okay, one of the things is, we kind of touched on this earlier, but not thinking too, finding better motivations than like long-term health. Finding more close short-term ones. This was something Aaron was saying yesterday, which is if you want to do a behavior and you don't enjoy doing it, you're going to end up stopping at some point, no matter what. Like if it's like, oh, I want to get healthy, I want to live to 100. It's like in a few weeks, you're like, oh, but today I don't really need to. Like I could just do it tomorrow. That motivator is so far in the future that it's really hard for your brain to connect it to this action. So making your behaviors enjoyable, first of all. So if it's, again, running, like connecting your run with like the good feeling you get afterward, or the increase in energy that you get the rest of the day after you run. Doing a workout and like enjoying the pump you get when you do it. Enjoying like seeing people you know at the gym, or doing it with a friend. Yeah, whatever you can do to bring the benefit to like right now, and bring it as close as possible to you.
But do you not have like a end goal in mind? And like,
I would say, so for me, I have an end goal when I'm thinking about like, what do I want to be doing with my life? It's like, oh, I want to be working out because I want to be healthy for a long time. But in the moment, that's not on my mind at all. Like when I'm going to the gym, I'm not like, oh, I'm going to be so healthy when I'm 80. Like it's not.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about that at all.
Right. But at the back of your mind somewhere, you do have that goal of like, I want to be able to run around when I'm 80.
Somewhere, yeah.
Really? Okay. I mean, consciously you made that goal.
Consciously, I made the goal to...
The long-term goal.
To be able to move around and not break bones too easily when I'm older.
Interesting. And what is the small... I mean, when you say small, do you mean like a week goal?
I would say like that day.
Oh, that daily
Some
goal.
reward that day for working out.
I see.
So like this morning, I woke up super early to go to that yoga, breathwork, cold plunge event. And I was like, if I go to this, I'm going to feel better the rest of the day. This is going to be a really good start to the day. I didn't really want to go. When I got there, I was like, what am I doing here? But then I got through it and I felt better.
And so do you remind yourself of that good feeling before you go to motivate yourself to go?
I try to, yeah. Just so that it's... Yeah, I mean, if it's something I'm struggling with, if it's something that's really deeply like grooved already, it's just a habit, then maybe not. But like they're usually with the gym, I just go. Like I don't think too much about it
because you've been doing it for so long.
But this is like early on in the process of creating that habit. You wanna tie it in with.
And how long does it take for that habit to stick for you in terms of health? And is that individual, or is that everyone gets it within like 3 months of doing it or whatever? Yeah,
that's a good question. I don't know how long. There is the saying, I think it's like 22 days or something, but
22? Okay.
I don't think that's a standard. I'm sure it could be different for everybody. Probably depends on the habit, if it's an easy thing to do, if it's a hard thing to do. The other thing for starting new habits is like we talked about, making them easy, making them accessible. So buying like healthy food, meal prepping. That's something I want to work on because I haven't been doing that very much. Having food ready for the week, so then when you are going to eat, it's an easy decision. It's like, oh, I'm going to eat the food I already have. I'm not going to go buy something or get food out. Other tricks.
Like other tricks, like as in, let's say, for example, like a great one that you do, which is, I'm giving you $500. You give it back to me only when I finish this goal of like fasting or whatever.
That's a good external one.
I love that one.
Yeah. So if you have a goal and you are struggling with motivation, that would be like an extrinsic motivator, which is find a friend you trust with money.
Yeah.
And then send them a substantial amount, something that like you would be pretty upset to lose that money.
Yeah.
And then have them hold you accountable. It's like, if I don't do this thing, don't give me the money back.
You get to keep it, right?
That's a good
By the
one.
way, it reminds me, I still owe you $500. I'm never giving it back. But yeah, that's a really good one. I think that does help you, like, anything that hurts you. Maybe it's money for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh man, I really don't want to lose that money.
And then
like,
the social,
okay,
similarly, social accountability is kind of similar,
right?
Because it's like you're going to take a social hit if you don't do it. Where it's like, if you tell a bunch of people that you're going to the gym, you're doing all this stuff, there's a fear that's like, oh, if I don't do it now, they're not gonna like me. Like they're gonna think or they're not gonna respect me.
Yeah.
More.
You know that, like, do you tell people your goals then, your health goals?
Occasionally, not
okay.
a lot.
Okay. Do you find that helps or deters you from reaching that goal?
I think it helps.
It does.
Yeah, it's again just more people, more eyes on it.
Yeah.
Less ability to hide and make excuses.
Yeah.
Yeah, what else is there with health? Yeah, really just building the routines, building the environment to make those things. Because like none of it is inherently that difficult. It's like you can exercise, work out. It doesn't have to be like a super hard workout.
What about the mental ability to do it? Like, there's, like, when I first started off, it seemed as though, are you kidding me? It's impossible to lose that much weight. And then, the ability for your brain to
That's the same thing
that.
with the like short term. It's like, because what you want is like, oh, I want to lose all this weight, or I want to get super big. I want to build a lot of muscle. That's a great goal to have, but that can't be the motivator every day. Because it's not close enough. It's not soon enough. So you want to figure out like, what I'm going to work out today. What is my reward for that? Oh, it's going to be that I feel better afterward.
Yeah.
That I feel in line with myself. I'll feel healthy. I'll feel more energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And something weird happens. Maybe you've definitely noticed it because you told me the story, but somewhere along your journey, like, you get some external feedback that like heightens up your ego. You're like, damn, you look good. I'm like, damn, I do look good. And then now there's more of a motivator to be like working out some more. And I noticed it when we played pickleball together. It was like, man, I'm like feeling so much lighter. Like you can actually move around. You're not as exhausted. All that stuff. It's a great feeling, and weirdly it helps with like keeping it going even more. Yeah. When
you get those little carrots.
Wins, those carrots,
yeah, those can be great.
Yeah, this is awesome. I learned a lot about the.
Okay, anything else on health?
The willpower and health. No.
Okay, let me let me ask you what day-to-day habits you have found to most increase your quality of life.
Daily habits for me, I think a big one has just been if you are able to surround yourself with like motivated people. I know that's maybe not considered a habit, but it's so important. And I think surrounding yourself with the same type of people might be the biggest kind of trick for me. But I think every day it's just been the tricks that we talked about, which is like the marble trick, like just putting one thing to another, something visual that you can see. Like those are things that I do to like maintain that willpower and motivation, I'd say. But I think now it's become such a habit that I don't usually make up a lot of excuses when it comes to stuff that I have to get done. At the start of every day, I usually do the hardest thing. And then weirdly, because I did the hardest thing, now I get this rush of like, well, everything I do after that is going to be easier. So that one's like a good one where I just finish off the hardest thing on my plate, and then you're just kind of, it's light work after that.
I like this idea. Do you do something
like that too?
I don't consciously do the hardest thing first.
Okay.
But I do like this idea of like these actions that don't seem beneficial at the moment, but then like pay off. So for me, it's walking, reading, probably a good night's sleep would fall into that, like eating healthy, just those things that like in the moment they don't seem like they're going to help you, but then like they pay off. Right. They pay off highly. Like when I go for a walk, I'm like, I'm so busy today, I don't have time to go out for a walk right now. But then I'm like, okay, I'm going to make myself. And so then I'll take Reba, we'll go around the block, and I'm like halfway around and I'm like, okay, this is what I needed. And I feel like so relaxed and then so much more energized when I get back. And then I like get into whatever work I have to, and it's, yeah, that's a game changer.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
What does financial freedom look like to you?
That's such a good question. I think if you have the ability to work on something that you really like, which means you have control of your time. So anywhere you have control of your time is financial independence for me. And usually they say a good metric is if you're making the same amount of money that you are with your job, with your business or whatever, and you're working a lot less because you have more time now, then you've made it. And I think that's a good definition for me, where if you're making the same amount, and that number keeps increasing, unfortunately, like as you get through your career, you're just making more money.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, now I gotta make even more with my business. So you have to catch yourself with that trap, because you really don't. I mean, you and I definitely don't need that much money to live. Like, we're very simple people. So I feel like you have to maybe balance that and make sure that you have that. But the ability to control your time is the metric for me in terms of financial security. Yeah
I think that's a good point, is like when you are choosing what you work on and the amount that you work on it, that's when you become financially free.
Do you have something like that where you have like something that you'd want to work on if you had all the time in the world?
Probably this right now, at least.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know how long that'll last, but
yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, I'm at a good spot though, where I have a good amount of time to work on stuff that I want to. Yeah.
And there is something to be said about, like, you don't need to quit your job to start something. I know you and I might disagree about this, but like, please don't quit your job to start something. Start something where you have enough time. Yeah. And weirdly, something happens when there's a time restriction. Because you only have 2 hours, 3 hours to get this done, you will do it within those 2-3 hours. If you had all the time, then you're not going to be doing it as efficiently. Right. But that's that sexy feature of like, I'm going to quit my job and then become a millionaire.
It feels good to think about that, but it's like that high risk thing that we're talking about. Right. Which is like, don't maximize the reward but minimize the risk.
Yeah. And you do need some set of like willpower to do that, because you don't want it to just you have to be motivated to do both things at once. Yeah. And so you kind of have to, I feel. Yeah.
All right, Avi. Where can people find out more about you? Is there anything you want
my
to promote?
Phone number. I'm not even on I'm not on any of the social stuff. Barely check that either, but it's 832-380-5845. No one will text or call me. And if they do, they're usually my friends, so it's okay. You can hit me up.
Nice. Cool. Anything you want to end with?
Again, I want to say this has been so lovely. This is so cool. And thank you for inviting me. I know this is going to blow up, and I'm so excited that I got to be one of the first few that got to do this with you. And I really am a long-time listener. There's a lot of great guests that you've had. So first-time caller, long-time listener. So I really appreciate you having me
thank
on.
you, dude.
Yeah.
Keep grinding.
For sure. Let's do it.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.